Well, we are truly in the nitty gritty of the fantasy season heading into week 12. I've got the waiver wire pickups of the week, as well as some players to avoid, because I think it's important not to waste your fab or your priority. But first things first, here are some key injuries that happened in week 11 that we're going to have to deal with heading into week 12. Drake London left the game, wasn't able to participate in overtime. Now, it was a knee injury, and he actually had injuries to both of his knees during this game. However, it's not thought to be overly serious, according to Adam Schefter. He's scheduled to undergo an MRI on Monday, so we'll know if he's going to miss time, and if any. There may be a chance that he doesn't, but that's reported both from Schefter and from Rappaport. Obviously, I have him in the flock league, desperately hoping that he doesn't miss time. I need the guy, but we're going to monitor that, and that will impact the waiver wire, of course. Josh Jacobs, it looks like Josh Jacobs may be a little bit more serious. According to Tom Pelissero, he's going to undergo more tests on Monday on his left knee, but the initial belief is he avoided a significant injury. However, there is still belief that he's going to miss time. Obviously, depending on how much time, that's going to impact today's waiver wire. Bashul Tutin left the game with a ankle injury. However, he didn't really talk about it in the post game, so there's potential that he's fine. He did break out. There's a chance that his role can continually grow. Amari DiMarcado left the game with an ankle injury. Trey Benson should be back soon. Chimere DK with a concussion, you can drop him. Tyler Higbee had the ankle. Aaron Rodgers, this is very significant not only for Aaron Rodgers, but for the DK Metcalfs of the world, the Jalen Warrens, anybody connected to the Steelers offense. He had a slight break in his left wrist, so he's going to undergo further tests as well on Monday, but he is going to be sidelined. We just don't know how long. Michael Penix and Dylan Gabriel both left the game as well with different injuries. Penix with the knee, Dylan Gabriel with the concussion. Okay, we're going to jump into names that I believe you should go out and pick up, but just quickly, I'm doing a segment every week called Honey Traps. These are names that look attractive for different reasons, but I believe that they are a waste of your money. Like if you're going to spend any significant fab or your top priority, these guys are worth picking up if it costs you nothing and if it's an afterthought. I would not spend heavy amounts of dollars on these names. For example, Matt Collins, who had a really good game on Thursday night for the Patriots. He had 64 yards, ended up with 10 fantasy points, 16 points the week before. But what you guys have to remember is that Kayshon Boutte has been out with the injury. When he's back, I expect Matt Collins to go back to complete irrelevancy. Adonai Mitchell, I actually really like Adonai Mitchell again, but more as a stash rather than a guy that you go out and you spend heavily on. In his first game as a Jet, he had 6 targets. I like that. He only played 28 snaps out of 57, but ran 21 routes out of 33. There's definitely potential for him. Honestly, with Garrett Wilson going on IR, if they just announced that Tyrod Taylor was quarterbacking, I would be more interested in Adonai Mitchell. But if it's Justin Fields, there's just almost no point. Okay, how about Xavier Legette? I'm not telling you that you can't go out and pick him up completely free. What I am telling you is we have seen Xavier Legette pop off before, and he's gone back to complete irrelevancy. Don't believe me? Well, how about in week 7 of the season where he had 24 points and we told you, hey, don't go out and spin fab on him. Don't go crazy. This is just another pop off week. Well, after he had that week, he had 3 weeks in a row under 4 fantasy points. Then this week he pops off with 4 catches, 83 yards and a touchdown. He also was injured a little bit during this game. I just don't think it's worth your time or your efforts. Bam Knight, the reason I'm not really too hyped on Bam Knight is because at some point we are going to get Trey Benson back. That could be this week. There's potential for that. And even if Bam Knight were to be in this game, that we could potentially see other running backs worked into that rotation. Last name here I want to talk about is AJ Barner. I would not spend any of your fab on Barner. I would not start him next week. We've seen plenty of up and down games for him. The reality is when you have JSN, Rashid Shaheed, 2 running backs that can catch the ball, and Cooper Kupp, there's just not enough to go around for AJ Barner. So I don't trust him. I think that was more of a matchup thing than something you can rely on each and every week. Okay, we're going to jump into my top 7 pickups this week, and then we're going to talk about Superflex and some other pickups that are more stashes. You guys ready? So my number 1 pickup this week, which we talked about in in a previous video, is Sean Tucker. Now, if you're out there and you are a Bucky Irving owner, just like myself, hopefully you picked him up last week like I did, because it was hard to trade for Rachaad White in my league, but I knew I could pick up Sean Tucker completely free, and there were trends to suggest that he was going to potentially take over as the RB1 in this offense. Now, Rachaad White still saw the vast majority of the snaps, 43 compared to 31, but when you look at rushing attempts, Sean Tucker had 19 rushing attempts compared to just 10 for Rachaad White, and it makes all the sense in the world why they did that, because Sean Tucker was a superstar, 106 rushing yards, 34 receiving yards. Not only did he have 2 rushing touchdowns, he also had the receiving touchdown. He was dominant in every aspect of the word. Unfortunately, he was sitting on my bench in the Flock League, and it's probably going to be a big reason why I lose this week, but hopefully you were bold enough to start him. He was one of our favorite desperation starts of the week. We mentioned him in our videos last week. But again, when you look at the breakdown of this backfield without Bucky Irving, this is really the first time this year that you've seen Sean Tucker lead the way in a vast majority of these categories. I'm willing to spend about 10 to 20% of my fab if you desperately need a running back, or if you're a Bucky Irving owner and you have no answer and someone else has Rachaad White. I think he's worth picking up at this point. Now, I'm still of the belief that when Bucky Irving's back, it's his backfield, and I don't think that they can eliminate Rachaad White's role, but still, just for that safety, for that security, just purely even as a handcuff, when you look at their schedule in the playoffs, Atlanta, Carolina, Miami, I think he is a must-roster player for the rest of the year because we just don't know when Bucky is back and ready to go. Okay, Emmanuel Wilson, the reason I have him at 2A and I can't be more aggressive with him is because at the time of recording this video, we just don't know how significant Josh Jacobs' injury is. If I knew Josh Jacobs was going to go on IR, I might be putting Emmanuel Wilson as my number 1 pickup. Like, there's a real world out there where that could happen. So you guys might know more by the time you're watching this video. But Emmanuel Wilson did lead the way for the Packers on Sunday. He had 39 out of 55 snaps, ended up with 12 total touches. Chris Brooks, who is the other backup, had just 1 single carry. So obviously the Packers have shown us that in the event that Josh Jacobs misses time, you would expect Emmanuel Wilson to be the guy. You can see it kind of visualized here. He's the light green color, dominated early downs, 2-minute drill, short yardage, third down, was there for the goal line scenarios when Josh Jacobs was off the field. So a really good offense and attached to is what Emmanuel Wilson's attached to. I apologize. He's well worth rostering because if Josh Jacobs misses time, he's a startable name. Okay, this name is maybe going to go under the radar, and I understand why, but I think you guys should take Chris Rodriguez seriously at this point. You can completely drop Bill Krosky-Merritt at this point. Maybe he was an industry plant. I mean, who knows? But Chris Rodriguez has completely taken over this backfield. On Sunday, he had 16 total opportunities. He was out there for 30 snaps. JC was out there for 18, and he by far looked the best running back the Commanders have had this entire year. Like, that's not an opinion, it's just a fact. He had 79 yards on 15 carries, was effective, dynamic, explosive, running north to south, not really getting cute with things, but just reading the hole and then getting as many yards as he can. Now, I understand that the Commanders are about to be on bye. I totally hear where you guys are coming from. But if you visualize this, it's obvious. Light blue is Chris Rodriguez. Again, dominating early downs, goal line, short yardage, all those valuable touches. It's Chris Rodriguez's backfield. And why I think he's really worth rostering is because you look at the playoff schedule. The Giants in week 15, the Eagles in week 16, and the Cowboys in week 17. Those are 3 matchups that you would feel comfortable starting him as a desperation flex. And obviously, if Jaden Daniels is back, you might have even more confidence to start him. Okay, at 2C, why don't we go ahead and talk about Kenneth Gainwell. Now, one injury that was well underreported is Jaylen Warren. We are going to need to monitor Jaylen Warren's status. He did suffer an ankle injury in the 3rd quarter. And by the way, I believe in the second half, he only played 3 snaps. That's right. He only played 3 snaps. That's why when we go out and we look at how the snaps were distributed for Pittsburgh, you're going to see Kenneth Gainwell, the vast majority of the snaps, 41 out of 65, just 18 for Jaylen Warren. He had 17 total touches, including 8 targets. He was dominant, over 29 fantasy points. And obviously, if Jaylen Warren were to miss time, we've already seen Kenneth Gainwell be the guy in this backfield. Remember week 4 versus Minnesota, his one time as a starter, over 31 points. So you're telling me the 2 times where Jaylen Warren was dealing with an injury, Kenneth Gainwell is averaging over 29 points. That is a name that is well worth rostering. He gets Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami. So again, if Warren were to miss time, I might be even more aggressive on him. Okay, let's go to the next tier because I do think there's a slight tier break here. And I do want to talk about Bashul Tutin for the Jaguars. He did have a great game here, obviously versus the Chargers. I have to keep in mind and I have to contextualize the game itself because the Jags were up. They won 35-6? They were dominating the entire game. They were up the entire game. And they could afford to put their secondary running backs in and get them more experience. But Bashul Tutin had 15 rushing attempts. Okay, with those 15 rushing attempts, he ended up with 74 yards and a touchdown, effective, efficient, and what you want to see out of your running back. So there's a possibility that they're going to work him more and more into the game plan. Unfortunately, again, he did suffer an ankle injury. It wasn't heavily reported on. And again, he didn't seem to be bothered by it after the game in the post, in the locker room. But I definitely think he's worth rostering. We could see him break out in the second half of the year. Okay, let's talk about Christian Watson, who ultimately ended up being the one reliable receiver for the Packers in this game. Romeo Doubs still got his opportunities, 7 targets, but they ran the same amount of snaps, routes run. They were within a couple, numbers there. But Christian Watson is the one who came down with the big touchdown. He is the big play threat. 4 catches, 46 yards. Romeo Doubs honestly had more targets, but he also had quite a few silly drops in this game. I think Watson, with all the injuries to this wide receiver room, could be more and more involved over the course of the year. We also saw Matthew Golden, their rookie, just completely uninvolved. 19 snaps. And if you actually look at his snap percentages this year, this is one of the lowest snap percentages he had in any game. So we could see Christian Watson really be pivotal moving forward. All right, at 7, I know you've been waiting for me to talk about it, and that is Michael Wilson. We do need to talk about Michael Wilson. Ultimately, there's a chance that Marvin Harrison is back this week. I'm not saying I know that, but if he's back this week, then Michael Wilson isn't even worth rostering. However, if Michael Wilson's going to be the wide receiver 1 for a good period of time, if we knew that Marvin Harrison was going to miss multiple games, then he would be a must play because in this game, Michael Wilson had 17 targets. He caught, 14 of them. And PFF actually isn't including all of his numbers. He caught 15 receptions for 185 yards, over 33 fantasy points. 185 yards is the most receiving yards in any game this year. And by the way, guess who played him in the Flock League? No, I didn't play him in my lineup. I played against him. I'll always remember week 11, Michael Wilson. But the reason I'm not higher on him is, again, because at any point, Marvin Harrison can come back, and you just don't expect Michael Wilson to do that when Marvin Harrison is healthy. Hey, guys, I just want to quickly let y'all know that there's a free feature on the Flock site called the My Teams feature. You do not have to buy any subscription at all whatsoever. But if you want to gain access to that, use a promo code LAND, create a free account, and then you'll be able to do that. Check that out in the pinned comments below. Okay, here are some other guys that we can briefly talk about. Starting off with Devin Singletary. Now, Devin Singletary was heavily involved in this game. 17 total touches. They utilized both of their running backs. He got into the end zone. He wasn't very effective, wasn't very efficient. I would still probably bet on Tyrone Tracy if I had to choose one running back for the rest of the year. Tyrone himself was much more effective, efficient. He had 23 total touches. But Devin Singletary is, a good desperation flex at best. I would like to quickly talk about Luther Burden, who finally outsnapped Olamide Zaccheaus. This is what we've been waiting on for Luther Burden. Typically, their roles were swapped, and you saw Zaccheaus get that 33 snaps compared to 10 for Luther Burden, but that swapped this game. Luther Burden ended up with 5 targets. Now, it didn't turn into much. No receiver in Chicago did really anything with their opportunities, but he is a talented guy, second-round pick, top 50 draft pick for the Chicago Bears. He's definitely worth monitoring. I also think there's another rookie that's worth mentioning, and that is Pat Bryant of the Denver Broncos. Now, in this game, We saw Pat Bryant have a much bigger role than we typically do. Again, another rookie who's getting a bigger role. So Pat Bryant outplayed Marvin Mims, and they really just made all the other receivers completely irrelevant outside of the Suttons and the Franklins. So he was out there for 35 snaps, 27 routes run, 6 targets, and he was actually leading the team in receiving yards. Talented young rookie that Sean Payton loves. He's worth mentioning. Just quickly with Darnell Mooney, if we were to see missed time for Drake London, there's a chance that it's Kirk Cousins as a quarterback 1 and Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver 1. So that's worth monitoring. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is Tyrell Shavers of the Buffalo Bills. Now, if you don't know, Keon Coleman was a healthy scratch this week. Ultimately, the Bills, they were just done with the Keon Coleman experience. And honestly, I can't say that I blame them too much. He missed a meeting and just didn't prioritize the right things, didn't always show effort. But Tyrell Shavers was out there for 30 snaps, same as Khalil Shakir. He had 14 routes run, 5 targets. He led the team in targets, led the team in receiving yards with 90. So he's a young, I know he's 26 years old, but he's a young in the league type of guy, a late declare into the NFL draft out of San Diego State. But he's worth monitoring if there's any sort of momentum there for Josh Allen. Okay, in Superflex leagues, just quickly, there's a chance Kirk Cousins starts next week, and there's a chance Shedeur Sanders starts next week. So if you're in a very big Superflex league, that is worth noting to you guys. So this week on FastDraft, we only made our money back, unfortunately. I just didn't pick the right lineup and the right bonuses, but I'm going to try again this week. You can create your own team. All you got to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks. Download the FastDraft app, use my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you'll get my weekly rankings. But I'm trying to win this contest every week. I'd love for you to join me. You can check that out in the pinned comment below. Let's look at some defensive streamers to end today's video. These are all defenses that are going up against matchups next week that are top 8 in fantasy football. The Raiders against the Browns is a great one. The Seahawks at the Titans. The Packers versus the Vikings with JJ McCarthy's turnovers. The Browns at the Raiders. I actually might prefer the Browns over the Raiders this week because they're just a better defense, and Myles Garrett's ridiculous. The Ravens versus the Jets, and the Falcons at the Saints. Those are all great streaming options if any of them are available. Some of them might already be rostered, but guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love, subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.